Hello and welcome to Diecast Restos. My name is Jason and this week I'll be customising this Corgi Juniors Whizzwheels De Tomaso Mangusta. The 6C Mangusta was released in 1970 and it lasted until 1973, which for Corgi was quite a short life cycle. This one's suffering from pretty comprehensive paint wear, plus the windscreen has picked up a bit of damage. This is the car the model replicates, the 1967 to 1971 Giugiaro designed Mangusta, complete with its distinctive gull-winged engine compartment. To match the wheels, these Hayashi Racing street wheels from Creative 164 do more than an adequate job. So as I begin dismantling it, let's first talk about the casting. It wasn't a carryover from the Husky series, nor was it a transfer from the short-lived Rockets range. It had, however, been under development while Mettoy's smaller scale series still carried its old name. There was enough time pre-production to ensure that the Corgi name was cast onto their bases. My example, with its yellow-green body and green-tinted windows, is an early issue. The transparency soon changed to an amber tint while retaining the same body colour. All models shared the same vacuum-plated plastic interior, which also served as the front and rear grills. Only once the window tint had changed colour could you find the 5-spoke Whizzwheels with or without chrome foil coating them. The early versions were always plain black. Partway through production, the body colour changed to metallic purple. This included the cast base piece. All of these had amber tinted windows fitted, with the only variation being the addition or lack of foil trim to those 5-spoke wheels. And that was it. After 1973, 2 years after the real car had gone out of production, the Corgi Mangusta was no more. The real De Tomaso Mangusta was the precursor to their most well-known model, the Pantera. I've worked on Matchbox's issue of this in the past, both restoring and customising one, so do go and take a look at that if you haven't already seen it. The Mangusta followed De Tomaso's first ever road-going car in 1967. That was the Vallelunga. The company had been founded only 8 years prior in 1959 by racing driver Alejandro De Tomaso. This came just 4 years after the Argentine had fled his country to Italy after being implicated in a plot to overthrow President Juan Perón in 1955. It seems as though De Tomaso himself may have been a bit of a divisive figure. His follow-up to the Vallelunga was named Mangusta, as it is the Italian word for mongoose. Mongooses are capable of killing cobras. It is rumoured that the new car was so named in retaliation to a failed deal between him and Carroll Shelby. De Tomaso had offered to build Shelby a Can-Am race car at the end of 1964, when Shelby found out his Cobra would not be able to compete. As De Tomaso had been planning on building a 7-litre V8 for racing, he saw this as the perfect opportunity. Shelby agreed to finance the project and arranged a Sports Car Club of America approved design team to go to Italy and handle the design work. But De Tomaso had conflicts over the design of the car. Shelby was unhappy with the bodywork, and this resulted in the failure to deliver the agreed 5 race cars ahead of the 1965 Can-Am season. This caused Shelby to back out and instead join the Ford GT40 development team. Pete Brock formed part of the initial design team and he stayed on to complete the car. De Tomaso engaged Carrozzeria Ghia to finalise the design of what was dubbed the P70. The single completed car was displayed at the 1965 Turin Motor Show as the Ghia De Tomaso Sport 5000. De Tomaso then modified the backbone of the chassis, originally of the Vallelunga, to create the Mangusta. Again, Ghia were engaged, with Giorgetto Giugiaro penning its design. De Tomaso would go on to purchase Carrozzeria Ghia in 1967. The main highlight of Giugiaro's design was the centre-hinged 2-section bonnet, which opened in a gull-wing fashion. Early European cars were fitted with a 306 horsepower Ford 289 V8 using a 5-speed ZF transaxle. Almost all Mangustas, both in Europe and the US, would receive a Ford 302 V8 instead. It had all-round disc brakes, independent suspension, rack and pinion steering, air conditioning and power windows, which were features ahead of their time compared to other similar manufacturers. But the Mangusta did have a low, cramped cabin and suffered from poor stability due to a 44/56 front-rear weight distribution. 401 Mangustas were built, with 150 made for Europe, the rest heading to North America. It was allowed into the US due to a federal waiver, which applied to the car due to its small production numbers. The Mangusta came without seat belts and headlights lower than the federal regulations permitted, so once this exemption expired, the front of the North American cars had two pop-up headlamps installed, in place of the quad round lights. Around 50 cars were produced in this configuration starting in 1969, while European cars continued to receive the original lighting arrangement. Of the 401 cars, one was built as a roadster, and one was built with a Chevy 327 engine for GM Vice President Bill Mitchell. The car's 1971 replacement, the Pantera, was an entirely new monocoque design and so bears little in common to the Mangusta. The Mangusta name was revived in the late 1990s when the De Tomaso Bigwa became the Cavalier Mangusta. This was originally sold as a De Tomaso before De Tomaso disassociated from the project. Another dispute. 284 of these, in my opinion, abominations were built between 1999 and 2002. For my custom piece, I wanted to replicate a European Mangusta with its quad round lights, as this is what the casting is closest to in its design. I think they look absolutely menacing when completely blacked out, including the door pillars. That was aside from the wheels, which I chose to leave in their original silver. I had earlier, prior to applying this black paint, experienced some blotching of the primer. The bodywork that had been exposed to the elements had been contaminated, so I sanded the affected areas down to try and mitigate the issue. Now wearing its clear coat, it's looking much sharper. To add some more interest to the rear, I'm going to be adding on some tailpipes using this aluminium tubing. Now let's put the Mangusta model back together. I've tried to polish up the transparency as best I could, even attempting to conceal the cracks with a pair of windscreen wipers. After the interior is slotted in, it's time to reattach the base. With posts too narrow to tap, this one snaps back together. Here's how my Corgi Juniors De Tomaso Mangusta was looking. This short-lived Whizzwheels model only came in a couple of colours, with minimal variations during its production run. I was therefore keen to recoat it in a paint job worthy of the real thing, in place of this yellow-green or the metallic purple alternative. I thought that with a couple of minor touches and a new set of wheels, this Mangusta could be completely refreshed. And here it is, blacked out and looking menacing. I've tried to conceal the deep-seated damage to the transparency, but the switch to a darker interior has highlighted the cracks if anything. But with that minor issue addressed, I'm most pleased with how similar these Creative 164 Hayashi Racing street wheels look to the stock set. I've given it smaller tread tyres to the front axle than the rear to allow for the raked appearance Corgi went with by fitting larger rear wheels from factory. I've then added some small touches of detail to it, including the headlamps onto the interior piece. The rear lights were also treated, while the engine was detailed and remains visible through that unique gull-wing cover. Those quad tailpipes then finish the rear off nicely. Let me know your thoughts on this build down in the comments and drop the video a like, but all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.